The Middle East is on the brink once again, teetering on the edge of a full-scale conflict. The conflict between Israel and Lebanon, fueled by long-standing tensions with Iran, has escalated dramatically, drawing global attention and concern. This recent eruption of violence has shattered years of relative calm, plunging the region into a state of fear and uncertainty. Civilians on both sides are bearing the brunt of the conflict, with homes destroyed and lives upended. At the heart of this conflict lies Hezbollah, the Iran-backed militant group based in Lebanon, and its complex, often hostile relationship with Israel. The group's military capabilities and political influence in Lebanon make it a formidable adversary. The latest chapter in this decades-long conflict began with accusations of Hezbollah attacks on Israeli territory, leading to a swift and forceful response from Israel. Israel responded with a series of airstrikes on alleged Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, aiming to cripple the group's infrastructure and deter further attacks. The situation quickly deteriorated, with both sides exchanging rocket fire and ground incursions becoming a grim reality. The intensity of the conflict has left many wondering how far it will go. Adding fuel to the fire, Iran has emerged as a key player in this conflict, providing support and resources to Hezbollah. Iran's unwavering support for Hezbollah, both militarily and rhetorically, has further inflamed tensions with Israel. This alliance has complicated efforts to mediate peace and has drawn in other regional powers. The potential for a wider regional conflict, with Iran directly involved, is a growing concern that has the international community on high alert. Diplomatic efforts are intensifying to prevent a broader war. The situation remains fluid, with the potential for further escalation looming large. Both sides are on high alert, and the risk of miscalculation is ever present. The international community is grappling with how to de-escalate the situation and prevent a humanitarian catastrophe. Aid organizations are mobilizing to provide relief to those affected by the conflict. The coming days and weeks will be critical in determining the trajectory of this dangerous conflict. The world watches with bated breath, hoping for a resolution that will bring lasting peace to the region. In a significant escalation of the conflict, Israeli defense forces launched ground incursions into Lebanese territory. This move marked the first time since 2006 that Israeli troops have crossed the Blue Line, the UN demarcated border between the two countries. The IDF claims that these incursions are necessary to target Hezbollah positions and infrastructure used to launch attacks against Israel. Israel alleges that Hezbollah has been using civilian areas in southern Lebanon as cover for its military operations. They argue that this tactic puts Lebanese civilians at risk and justifies their ground offensive. However, these incursions have been met with condemnation from the international community, with many expressing concern over the potential for civilian casualties. The Lebanese government has denounced the Israeli ground incursions as a violation of their sovereignty. They maintain that Hezbollah is a legitimate resistance movement fighting against Israeli occupation. The presence of Israeli troops on Lebanese soil has further inflamed tensions and raised fears of a wider conflict. The duration and scope of these ground incursions remain unclear. Israel has stated that their operations will continue as long as necessary to neutralize the threat posed by Hezbollah. However, the international community is urging restraint and calling for a ceasefire to prevent further bloodshed. Adding another layer of complexity to the already volatile Middle Eastern conflict, Iran has emerged as a more assertive player, showcasing its military capabilities and strategic ambitions. Following a series of Israeli airstrikes targeting what they claim are Iranian military installations in Syria, Iran responded with its own missile attacks on Israeli-held territory, marking a significant escalation in hostilities. While Iran did not directly claim responsibility for these retaliatory attacks, it is widely believed that they were carried out by Iranian-backed militias operating within Syria. These groups have been instrumental in Iran's strategy to extend its influence across the region. Israel has long accused Iran of using the chaos in Syria as a cover to establish a military foothold on its northern border. This has led to a series of preemptive strikes aimed at disrupting these efforts. The Israeli government views Iran's growing influence in the region, particularly its support for Hezbollah in Lebanon, as a direct and existential threat to their national security. This has been a major factor in their aggressive military posture. Israel has repeatedly stated that it will not tolerate an Iranian military presence in Syria and will continue to take decisive action to prevent it. This includes airstrikes and other military operations aimed at Iranian assets and their allies. The uncertainty surrounding Israel's response to these Iranian missile strikes has fueled widespread speculation about a potential wider conflict. Analysts are debating the possible scenarios and outcomes of this escalating tension. Some analysts believe that Israel may be considering more drastic measures, such as strikes on Iranian oil facilities or other strategic targets within Iran itself. Such actions would be aimed at crippling Iran's economic and military capabilities. Such a move would represent a significant escalation of the conflict and could have far-reaching consequences for the entire region, potentially drawing in other countries and leading to a broader war. The international community is watching the situation closely, urging both sides to exercise restraint and avoid actions that could lead to a full-scale war. Diplomatic efforts are being made to mediate and find a peaceful resolution. The risk of miscalculation is high, and any further escalation could quickly spiral out of control, leading to unintended and potentially catastrophic consequences. The focus now is on finding ways to de-escalate the situation and prevent a wider regional conflagration. Diplomatic channels are being explored, and there is a concerted effort to bring both sides to the negotiating table to discuss a long-term solution. Section 4. Targeting the head of the snake. Strikes on Hezbollah. Leadership. In a move that sent shockwaves through the region, Israel carried out targeted airstrikes aimed at eliminating key figures within Hezbollah's leadership. These strikes, which targeted locations in southern Beirut and other parts of Lebanon, are believed to have been aimed at individuals like Hashem Safieddine, a high-ranking Hezbollah official, and Hassan Nasrallah, the group's secretary general. Israel views the targeting of Hezbollah's leadership as a way to disrupt the group's command and control structure and weaken its ability to operate. They argue that these leaders are directly responsible for planning and carrying out attacks against Israel, and therefore legitimate military targets. However, these strikes have drawn condemnation from the international community, with many expressing concern over the potential for civilian casualties and the escalation of the conflict. The targeting of civilian areas, even if aimed at military leaders, raises serious questions about proportionality and adherence to international law. Hezbollah has vowed to retaliate for these strikes, further fueling fears of a wider conflict. The group has a history of responding to Israeli attacks with rocket fire on Israeli cities, and the potential for a significant escalation of violence remains high. Section 5. Collateral damage. Gaza and the West Bank caught in the crossfire. While the primary focus of the conflict has been on Lebanon, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank have also been drawn into the violence. These regions, already fraught with tension and historical grievances, have seen a significant uptick in hostilities. Israel has carried out airstrikes on targets in Gaza, citing rocket fire from Hamas, the militant group that controls the territory. The airstrikes are part of a broader strategy to neutralize perceived threats, but they often result in widespread destruction. These strikes have resulted in civilian casualties and further exacerbated the already dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. Hospitals are overwhelmed, and basic necessities like water and electricity are in short supply, making daily life a struggle for the residents. In the West Bank, tensions have soared between Israeli forces and Palestinian protesters. The region has become a flashpoint for confrontations, with both sides entrenched in their positions. Clashes have erupted in several cities, with Palestinian youth throwing stones and Molotov cocktails at Israeli soldiers. These confrontations often escalate quickly, leading to injuries and sometimes fatalities. The Israeli military has responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, and live fire, resulting in Palestinian casualties. The use of such force has been widely criticized by human rights organizations, who call for more measured responses. The involvement of Gaza and the West Bank in the conflict highlights the interconnectedness of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict with broader regional dynamics. The issues in these territories cannot be viewed in isolation. They are part of a larger geopolitical puzzle. The escalation of violence in one area inevitably spills over into other areas, creating a vicious cycle of violence and retribution. Each act of aggression fuels the next, making it difficult to find a path to peace. The international community has expressed concern over the deteriorating situation in both Gaza and the West Bank. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing, but achieving a lasting resolution remains elusive. They have called for all parties to exercise restraint and avoid actions that could further inflame tensions.
However, with the conflict showing no signs of abating, the humanitarian situation in both territories is likely to worsen. Aid organizations are working tirelessly to provide relief, but the scale of the need is immense and growing. The impact on the younger generation is particularly concerning. Children in Gaza and the West Bank are growing up amidst violence and uncertainty, which could have long-term effects on their mental and emotional well-being. Despite the challenges, there are also stories of hope and resilience. Communities are coming together to support one another, and efforts to rebuild and recover continue even in the face of adversity.